Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
Hey, it's me, Egbert, E-G-G-B-U-R-T. Check out my website at egbert.com. Now it's back to those two dudes who told me they would bring in big ratings. They better are their history. Here are Brad and John.
And check out John Combest's website, J-O-H-N-C-O-M-B-E-S-T, johncombest.com. Always lots of information on there, and I don't know if I ever told you the story. John will get a kick out of this, maybe he won't. One day, this is probably, 6 or 7 years ago, Shelley came back from a Chamber of Commerce meeting. I didn't go that day, and she says, "Hey, Brad, they talked about this website that if you want to know what's going on in the state of Missouri, you need to have access to this website." I go, "What website is it?" And she goes, "It's this guy, johncombest.com." And my reaction to her was, "Who the hell's John Combest?" Right.
And you're still trying to figure that out.
I'm still saying.
And it's a good opportunity to say thank you, as I have when you've told the story before, to whoever it was at the chamber who promoted my website. Thank you. I don't go around promoting my website. In fact, one of my claims to fame, Brad, is that I aim to be the only blogger that doesn't tell everybody that they have a blog. And so thank you to whoever went out and promoted my website. Brad, I wanted to mention, too, I mentioned this during the break. I've had to correct. I've become such an elitist about this, Brad. I've had to correct 3 people in the last, we'll call it 36 hours, who refer to our radio show as a podcast. Now, I know that in some respects you could listen to it in podcast format. You could go to bjshow.co, or you could listen to it. Sure, it's in a podcast format. And then I think about the fact that sometimes I mistakenly refer to our friend Jason Rosenbaum's radio show as a politically speaking podcast, when really it's a radio show that also happens to be a podcast. But it's funny because some chick, I'm going to obfuscate some details here, but somebody who occasionally listens to the show sent me something that she wanted me to talk about on the show. And in her defense, she said it might be great content for the podcast/radio show. And like, when well-intentioned people get something wrong, I like to really stick it to them and tell them I don't do a podcast. So I'm going to leave out some of the details there. But the point is, Brad, I've become such an elitist about it because you know what? We're not podcasters, Brad. We do a radio show, and you can listen to it in podcast format.
Well, years ago, and I still think this is true, one of my radio buddies said that, and to a certain extent, sometimes the lines between podcasts and radio shows is very hard to define. And typically most of the stations, like 97.1, each segment they do, and I have to give them credit for it. They do an extremely excellent job at this with their podcast, and I mean with their app, Odyssey, the whole bit. As the show progresses, when they finish a segment, they immediately upload that onto their website, so you can listen to it. You can listen to it almost instantly. I mean, after it's done, it's there. And
it's incredible. Let me interrupt, Brad. I've gone sometimes in the morning, right after we get off the air. I've gone to Mark Cox's show, and it's up the same morning. So to your point, like, boy, they do. And Annie Fry's show does such a great job. They do it on YouTube and on podcasts. They have a great operation over there.
Right. And it reminds me of something years ago. You go back 20 plus years, actually probably 25 now, when you had the .com boom and you had all these internet dudes, like probably the classic example of this was the pets.com website, because these internet entrepreneurs were going, like, well, we're going to kill all the brick and mortars. You don't hear that too much anymore. We're going to kill all the brick and mortars because of the fact that we're on the internet and they're not. So what happened? All the brick and mortars decide, okay, two can play this game. We've got a store, but we also can put up our own website. So you can do either one. You can either come to our store, or you can go on the website, or most of the places now, you can do like a hybrid where you can go on the, like, for example, Wally World, Best Buy. You can go on their website, you can order it, and then if you want to, you can do one of two things. You can go pick it up, or you can go just have it shipped to you. And once again, that's the thing that Amazon experimented with about having an Amazon store, and I don't think that's gone over too well. I think the ones they've had is the idea. So they're pretty much sticking with their thing. Having said that, which is what one of my radio buddies said. He said, all these guys who are bragging about, well, I've got a podcast. He says, you go to every one of those people who has a podcast, and you say to them, hey, how would you like to have a radio show? And they go, whoa, I'd love that. So in other words, it's the idea being that podcasts in the hierarchy of media are below a radio show, okay? And now I know people are going to say, yeah, right, Brad, you're just saying that because you're a radio guy. But you know what? To a certain extent, it's true, because the problem is, if you look at the statistics, and I get these all the time because I'm on all these different trade magazine or trade websites and things like that. Every single day, there's 14 million new podcasts, and typically what happens is, somebody's excited. Well, I bought my Rode Podcaster, and I bought my SM7B microphones, and I got my buddies. We're coming over tonight. We're going to do our podcast. And they do that for about a week, and then they don't do it for a couple more weeks, and then they do it for a couple more months, and then pretty soon they're not doing it anymore. So you go to some of these podcasts, and they've got like 3 episodes up or stuff like that, okay? Not bragging, but John and I haven't even done this show for a year yet, and I think we're well into the 500 range. I think as far as on YouTube, aren't we like in the upper 500s or something like that as far as number of?
Yeah, I mean, we've been on the air for 198 mornings. So next week will be our 200th show, and you can count it by segments or however you want to do it. But by next week there'll be 200 days where we were on here at 7 a.m. And then with the exception of like a vacation or medical issues, we do it Monday through Friday. So we don't make excuses. We don't take hiatuses.
Which tracks because, in fact, we're coming up on the 600th episode that's on the podcast, and 600th episode that's on the YouTube channel as well, too, because 200 times 3 would, And there are times, and let me point out, too, there are times where, like, if I had kid stuff that I absolutely had to be there, Brad, you've been very gracious about maybe the third segment we would forego that day. But, yeah, to your point, Brad, it's one of those things when people say, I know I beat this dead horse, but when people say, I'm thinking about, it's like, you won't. And people say they're going to do a podcast, and they can do it for exactly what you said, Brad, a few days, and then they'll quit. It's like people that say they're going to start a blog or whatever. So those are the occasions where you smile and nod and you say, oh, that sounds like a great idea to do a podcast. Well, and then you just go on with your life. It's the classic example, and I'm not going to make fun of, and this guy might even know who he is if he's listening. I doubt he is. And I've had this happen. Not one guy. I've had it happen 3 or 4 times. I've had people through the years say, hey, can I do a Saturday morning show, on half an hour show on your radio station? Sure, yeah, I'll give you some pricing, the whole bit, okay? And they get real excited for 2 or 3 weeks, and the one guy, this would always sort of bother me. Like, he was supposed to go on the air at 8:30. At 8:20, he would call me and say, oh, you know what? I forgot to call you. I'm not going to be in this morning because I got to go to my kid's soccer game.
God.
I'm going I go, dude, first off, once again, if you're going, it would start to be like back in the day, Johnny Carson saying, you know what, I don't think I'm going to do a show for a couple weeks. Just run some Beverly Hills Hillbillies reruns. Yeah. Once again, there's this thing called in business and in broadcasting, and this is the big difference between linear and nonlinear broadcasting. And I know this is different because now you got Netflix and you can watch everything whenever you want. But still, it's to the point where one of my very first program directors used to always say, a good radio station is like McDonald's. If you go to McDonald's, you always know there's going to be a Big Mac on the menu, and there's always going to be a Quarter Pounder on the menu. And the same thing with a radio station. If you go to a radio station and you want hit music, you know that back in the day, KHTR or KSLQ or even today, Z1077, they're going to be playing the hits. You want to listen to country music, you listen to the Bull or WIL. You want to listen to wacko left-wingers, supported by your tax dollars, listen to KWMU. You know what I mean? That's just the way it is, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think back to the days of the BS show. We've paid a lot of homage today to the BS show. And back in the days of the BS show, I know that, once every quarter, an unnamed co-host would finally break you and get you to play Evanescence.
I've never played that.
I don't know, Brad. I heard that you had a co-host that could convince you at times to play Evanescence. That's just what I heard. What was the song, My Immortal?
Yes.
You're so irrationally against great music, Brad. I don't know why you wouldn't just play it, like just one day play it for 24 hours, you know? Treat it like the Macarena. It's an event.
Okay, hold on a minute, John. Okay. I have a phone, and I know how to use it, okay? Gonna make a phone call. I doubt she'll answer. We'll wait and see here. Hold on a minute.
Hello?
Okay, you're on the air, so no potty mouth, okay?
Oh, well,
okay.
That's a lot to ask of me, Brad.
Okay, Shelley Barr. Okay, John Combest.
Brad Hildebrand.
Well, and
John Combest.
You can't hear John Combest. He was kidding about the fact that back in the day when we did the BS show, you were always bugging me about playing Evanescence, My Immortal, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
How many times did I play that?
Well, you played it
I know
quite a bit, but then you
No.
didn't play it anymore.
No. I have never played that song on Westplex 107.1. It is not.
Not on Westplex 107.1 on KSLQ.
Right. It's so. In other words, when we did the show on Westplex 107.1, how many times did I play My Immortal by Evanescence?
None.
0. Right. So I never played it. And what did I always tell you?
It had something to do with the timing.
Well, it's like 6 minutes long, and what we tried to do when we put Westplex 107 on the air.
And then you called me out and threw me under a bus with the program director at KC.
That was funny.
I'm like, what are you doing?
That was funny. That
was a throat punch.
That was funny. Okay, you doing okay this morning so far?
I am.
Okay.
I've just been listening to you, lovely gentlemen. And
no, you have not.
Listening to all your BS. Oh, yes, I have.
So when the phone started to ring, did you know it was me then?
Yes.
Okay, never mind.
Okay. Because my phone knows who you are.
That's what she said. Okay.
Yeah, it says throat punch.
That's Shelley's favorite maneuver for, you and JC need to get together and attack me. You could throat punch me and he'd punch me in the face. Okay. So what do you think of that? Okay. I'll talk to you later. Okay. Bye-bye.
Oh, bye. Bye, John.
Bye.
Okay. She brought up, and once again, this is the fun part of live radio. Let me tell you the story quick. She's telling me that they play, and she's always going, well, they play Evanescence on KC. I go, no, they don't play Evanescence on KC. So one morning, I go like, let's call KC. So like at like 6:50 in the morning, we did the show from 6 to 8. I call the main switchboard number for Hubbard, and it takes you through the phone tree and the whole thing, and we get Marty Link, and I'm going like, oh, I know Marty, he's the program director. So we leave a voice message from Marty at like 5 minutes to 7. And hey, Marty, Brad Hildebrand, blah, 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 blah. We're on the air. We're having this discussion. Could you call us back? I'm thinking, there's no way in hell he's going to call us back. 10 minutes later, he's on the phone. So we get Marty Link, the program director for KC, and I ask the question, Marty, how many times have you played Evanescence, My Immortal on KC? And his answer was never. Now, the interesting thing was, I learned an interesting tidbit about KC. He told us that as far as they're concerned, now this has been a couple years ago, it may have changed. He says, as far as they're concerned, the rock era ended in 2000. So they never play anything that's been recorded past the year 2000.
You're kidding me.
No, he said.
I don't think you've told this before.
Oh yeah. He said that right on the air. He said, and it's interesting because of the fact that there are a lot of people that agree with that rock and roll, as you and I grew up with it, Journey and things like that, is dead. And the interesting part of this is, look at who's touring now. Last year you had Jeff Lynne, or last week it was ELO. All these guys who are in their 70s and 80s. Look at the Rolling Stones, okay? There are, when you think about this, name me a rock group right now, a rock group that's touring, that everybody in the group is under 40. And
I was just going to say, Brad, I can't think of any.
That's the whole point. Take it one step further. Take a rock group that everybody in the group is under 30. And to point out.
And so wouldn't you say that like the popular, Morgan Wallen isn't rock music. Like, who is rock music today? Would it be like like a jelly roll, or what would you call him?
Well, but see, the interesting thing is, the rock genre it's and there's a I'm not an expert on this, but I will give you my 2 cents on this. Okay, the powers that be got tired of dealing with a bunch of stoned out dudes who couldn't get along, let me give you the perfect example. Go watch the movie Almost Famous, one of my all-time favorite movies, behind the scenes of a rock group that's trying to make it into the big time and the whole bit like that. Okay, when you have one person, Justin Bieber, or you have Taylor Swift doesn't have, okay, I'm going to ask a question. Who plays guitar on Taylor Swift's songs? Nobody knows.
Idea. They can an interchangeable piece. It's like whoever hosts Jason Rosenbaum's Politically Speaking, you could swap them out in every city and nobody would notice.
Right. And the whole idea behind that is that's what the record companies want. They don't want to deal with 6 guys, 5 of who are so stoned they have no idea what day it is. They want to deal with one person. And if you go through, if I pull out American Top 40 right now, if I pull out I'll do this. Are we in good? Are we tight for time this morning? You got to get out of here in a hurry?
We're good. We can keep going. Yeah.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, we can keep going.
Let me pull up AT40. I'm going to pull up AT40 right now. Okay, we'll go through the songs, and I will tell you, I don't think there's hardly any groups in the AT40. Okay, let's top 40 charts. This week's top 40 charts. Okay, number 1, $1 Million Baby, Tommy Richmond, one guy. Now, I will tell you this is an exception to the rule. A bar song by Shabuzi, which I think is 3 dudes. Please, 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 Sabrina Carpenter, one person. Espresso, Sabrina Carpenter. She's number 3, number 4. Number 5, Hozier, one dude. Number 6, Chappell Roan. Number 7, Billie Eilish. Now, we do have collabs. Number 8 is Post Malone featuring Morgan Wallen. Number 9 is Benson Boone. Number 10 is Eminem. Number 11 is Madison Beer. Number 12 is Taylor Swift. Number 13 is Benson Boone. Benson Boone. Number 14 is Ariana Grande. Number 15 is Dasha. Number 16 is Kendrick Lamar. Should I go any further? There are no groups anymore.
We get it, Brad. You're absolutely right about that.
It's all individual people. And once again, the idea being is that it's changed. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that a lot of these people are discovered on YouTube as solo artists and the whole bit. And nowadays, you don't need all the musicians because of the fact that you've got Pro Tools, and people going like, okay, what's Pro Tools? I would say right now that 95% of the music that you hear, the recorded music that is, produced and I don't care, and maybe with the exception of stuff you find on some of the TikTok and YouTube stuff. But if you're hearing it on the radio, if it is a established artist doing it, it's done on Pro Tools, which is what they call a DAW, or a digital audio workstation, workshop, whatever you want to call it. And essentially, all they're doing is they're sampling stuff, they're pulling in little drum beats, they're pulling in synthesizer riffs, and that's like, if you've ever seen the Taylor Swift documentary, which I've watched, by the way, which is sort of interesting, her interacting with her parents a whole bit. I thought that was fascinating, behind the scenes stuff with that. But she's in a studio by herself. There's no musicians there. There's no drummer. There's nothing there. And that's the way things are today. So that was our infamous call to Marty Link at Keishi. And it's so funny. I think about that. I think to myself, every time I think about that, God, 2000, no rock anymore. And once again, with the exception of my youngest son, who's now 30, who's like in this crazy ass time warp. Did I say this? He's in a crazy butt time warp. To the point where my son, everything he listens to, all the artists are dead, because they're all like rock and rollers from the 70s and 80s. He wasn't born until 93, so in other words, it's like, okay, this is sort of weird. He's this out of step kid. If I say to him, hey, do you like Sabrina Carpenter? He said, who's that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. But wouldn't you say too that a lot of that is geographic? Like he's had a really popular St. Louis radio legend do yacht rock down there, which definitely influenced him. Like, in fact, from what I heard, it's his favorite radio personality ever down in his neck of the woods.
It's not me. And you just like I've told the story. My mom, matter of fact, to this day, Mom, if you're listening right now, I know you're not. My mom has never listened to me on the radio, ever in my entire life.
And why is that?
I don't know. She just never did.
Did she just want to like withhold approval from you so that you had to keep working for it?
She hated the radio. Matter of fact, there was a running joke that went back in the day. My mom was an interesting woman. Okay, my mom used to say, you never want to buy a new car off the lot at a car dealer because there's something wrong with all those cars. You need to order a car. My mom and dad would always order a car. For years, my mom would order a car and delete the radio. Specifically going, you can't even do that anymore. But back in the day, you could delete the radio. And my dad, because the pecking order was, she got the new car, then my dad got her hand-me-down, she got a new car. I can remember my dad on 2 separate cars buying kits that he would buy, and this was not on the internet. He would have all these catalogs, and he would retrofit a radio in the car because he wanted to listen to the radio. If I drove my mom's car, and if any of my cars right now, you get in, turn the ignition, radio's always on. You know, it always drives me nuts if I take my car and you get like in service or something like that or inspection. They always turn the radio off. I turn the ignition on, and okay, my radio's broke. Oh no, they turned it off. Okay, if I drove my mom's car, and I did not turn the radio off before I turned the ignition off, the next day, after my mom drove that car, she would come in like with fire in her eyes. She says, I turned the ignition on and the radio came on. You know I hate the radio. I swear that was my mom. And her son ends up in the radio business.
Now, Brad, do you see the irony here between, I know that we're over time here, but do you see the irony in your mom wanting things fresh, new, clean slate, and your decade of difference, Bill, which encourages men to pick up used women?
I'm not going to touch that, John.
I'm so happy it's Friday, Brad. It's been a joy to spend these 65 minutes with you, Brad.
John, I have women that I know that listen to the show who, if I rate you, the text they send me about you.
Oh, thank you. I love that, Brad.
Yeah.
And they know that they're in the overwhelming minority of listeners to our show, and I accept their feedback. I appreciate their feedback. It won't change anything I say or do on the show. I don't listen to women in my life, much less random women I don't know, but I appreciate their feedback, and it's very much well, I wouldn't say it's valuable to me, but I appreciate their feedback, Brad. And because they're friends with you, I respect their opinion.
John, we got to go. Say goodbye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?